So the funny thing is, like, you're talking about getting too specific. I've actually did this, and I will say I actually think it gave me positive effect. I bought a because they're everybody buys them and then never uses them. I bought a total gym off of Craigslist, and then attached Vasa trainer paddles to it.
Oh,
And
cool.
I picked it up for like $50, and then my coach had Vasa trainer paddles. So I it is not my whole strength workout. We have a whole other things I do for my strength route, but like when I come home from the pool, I've done my pool set, I do my strength stuff, and then I come home, get on the total gym, I can lay down on it, do basically fly with the Vasa trainer paddles, and I've used that to help build strength because like my limiter um, for anything, be it swimming or running, or whatever, is always like max power. I'm a terrible sprinter, just terrible. So
Sure.
it's helped me a lot bring that high end power up so that I can slowly start to build my threshold pace in the
Yeah.
pool.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
don't
been
have any, I think that's great. And I don't have any problem with that. Like, that's a great recommendation. I think the Vasta trainer, that's the appropriate amount of specificity, especially
right,
given like this is your weakness, therefore you need to train it, right?
right,
Um, the best example would probably be running with ankle weights. Um,
yeah,
sounds good in theory, but changing the proportions of the proportional weights of your lower body like it's not mimicking the same mechanics as you would have when you're really running. So wearing a weighted vest would be a little bit of a better approach because now it's
right,
concentrating the weight closer to your center of gravity, or doing resisted sprints with bungee cord or a parachute or running up a hill. Like those are all better options than using ankle weights.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Think about it too. Like as you're saying, ankle weights. I'm even thinking about like almost like feeling through the motion. I'm like, I'm gonna have more impact in my knees and in the way my foot's gonna plant is probably gonna be different because of that. The amount of force you're gonna have to apply to move the ankle weight, it's gonna flip out your foot farther faster, which is gonna make you more prone to like heel strike. And you don't want that. So like yeah, trying to adjust for that would be really odd. I think you would end, yeah, like you said, end up working on. You would improve some muscles, but not the muscles that you need to actually run faster.
Yeah, from a like yeah, it's going to give you a training effect, but like as much as we want the training effect, we want the training effect with the technique boost, right?
Right.
So it's not just about putting in the mileage or the yardage, but it's putting in the perfect mileage or like maintaining proper technique or striving for better technique under fatigue and with higher training volumes.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so one thing I saw on your social media is you spend it seems like a lot of time um, kind of I'll say dispelling myths or like trying to educate people on like what's going on. You've got these
I'm
nice
trying.
graphics, and you're working hard. So anybody listening to this, or if you're watching on YouTube, we'll plug Travis's social media here at the end too. But check that out because he's got a lot of good information and shareable graphics and all kinds of stuff. So um, lots of good stuff there. But where do you is it just a marketing thing like we were talking kind of marketing before we got going, is it just a marketing thing where you're like, hey, then people can talk to me, or where does the idea come from where you're like, all right, let's get rid of these kind of bad thoughts or myths that people have about all these different workout processes.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is um, like just inspired by the things that I hear other people say and see
Mm-hmm.
on social media. Like a good example, this might have been the most recent one, was like somebody came out and he said that like heavy bilateral squats and deadlifts hurt his back. And that's fine. Like that's true. I know that he has a history of back problems and he prefers to do unilateral exercises like split squats, lunges, that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
instead of like barbell back squats and barbell deadlifts. totally fine. But I felt like the connotation, I didn't feel like he gave the appropriate amount of nuance to say, like, I have a history of back pain, um, and it's exacerbated when I do these lifts. Therefore, in my training and in my clients' training, I do this. It was just kind of like a meme showing that squats and deadlifts break your back. And that the problem with that is, like, with the appropriate amount of context, no problem. But when somebody who doesn't have like any sort of prior knowledge about any of this
Mm-hmm.
sees that, they're like, that kind of reinforces these negative beliefs, like, oh, okay, like I heard my doctor, or I heard some experts say that squats and deadlifts are bad, and now this is confirming it. So now I'm afraid to ever lift anything. And that is just it's like a debilitating narrative and belief process.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, for certain people, those exercises are not going to be right for them or for them at the moment. But there are plenty of people who can do those exercises safely and with heavy loads and not have a problem. So it's just about the appropriate amount of nuance and realizing that every person's different. And so that's kind of the issue with any blanket statement, like,
Right.
oh, this exercise is bad, or even, oh, this exercise is good. Like, nothing is universally true about that. And so that I made a post just kind of trying to elaborate on that. And that's sort of where I've gone with a lot of these things, like trying to dispel the good versus bad and just provide the appropriate amount of nuance. And I think like anybody who is in the movement realm and trying to educate people, we're usually good intention, right? We're trying to keep
Mm-hmm.
people safe and give them a training effect. But I think what some people don't realize is that like different people are coming in with different prior experiences and knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you tell the person who's already scared, if you give them like this kind of scary message, that's just going to reinforce those beliefs and it's going to make them more fearful, which could actually contribute to them having pain down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if you give the same message to some idiot who's already doing stupid stuff in the gym, like maybe that is going to be helpful for them. But that basically means is that one, you can't just like put out one message to the world because you have different people coming in with different conceptions and misconceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of my just trying to give people more information, raise more awareness about these things, that there's always two sides of every story, and that it's never black and white. And so the infographics that I've been putting out kind of, I think they attract the eye a little bit, and hopefully that gets more people engaging with them. And after I finish my PhD, I'm tinkering with the idea of kind of combining them all and making like one resource where they're all in one place, and I can just kind of go into more detail. I haven't figured out whether that's just going to be like a free giveaway on my blog or if I'm going to try to sell it. Right now, I don't really sell anything besides personal training, so
Mm-hmm.
might be a good idea to actually sell something, but and it's probably gonna take me a while to put it together. So maybe I should try to get myself compensated for it. But I
Yeah.
just mostly I just want the information out there for people, because I think that there's so many sources of misinformation and there are so many sources of limited information, like people who are like I said, who are well intentioned or who are just trying to keep people safe and
Mm-hmm.
don't realize the damaging narratives that those messages can have.
Right. Well, it's like I think in especially when we're talking about like sharing things on social media, which I found the infographics you had on your Facebook page. It's like it's easier to make a meme or something very short and share it and get people to share it versus what I refer to as fighting the good fight and being like, in any case, going back to what we said in the very beginning, like it depends. And then from there, here's the whole spiel about everything you need to know for your particular situation.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you're doing that. I feel like I try to do the same thing. And sometimes I find myself, especially here on the podcast, being very, very wordy because it's like there's so much to say about this one particular small situation, and it's not just a simple answer most of the time. Even if you have all the experience in the world, it's like, well, there's 10,000 situations we could talk about right now, depending on what's happening. And we have to diagnose that and go through all the options. And I think it's overwhelming to a lot of people. But then I also think there is a smaller segment of people, and those are the people that you have I think, the greatest chance of affecting, that need that information, that will see like the stuff you're putting out and go, finally somebody who can actually like explain it all to me and go, oh, like it totally makes sense now. I
Yeah,
get why that other thing doesn't make sense, even though, everybody liked it and everybody shared it.
yeah, that's the problem is that people, it's easier to think in black and white. So people just want to know, are squats and deadlifts bad?
Right.
Really good. And the message that squats and deadlifts are bad is more attention grabbing. It's more sexy. It's gonna share farther and wider. And so that's kind of the challenge that I'm fighting, and I'm sure you're fighting too. It's like I'm gonna put out the I'm gonna use all 2,200 characters in the Instagram thing, or I'm gonna
Right.
write a 1,500 word blog post about whether you should be able to crawl like a baby and whether that matters, because I think it's important. But it's going to be harder to sell, just not monetarily, but sell the people on actually reading it when
Hmm.
your message is more nuanced and more shades of gray.
Yeah, I think, and I could be wrong because I'm not. I don't think either of us is a massive has a massive audience at this point. But my theory, and we'll see how this plays out over age and time, is that if you are consistent with giving good information and you stay around for the long haul, that will pay dividends in time because you have basically a portfolio of work over 2 years, 5 years,
Yeah,
10 years
I
of
think
here's
that's
all the information that I've been trying to share with everyone.
right. That's the challenge. Like people see people with huge followings and think that it happened overnight, um, and it certainly doesn't. Um,
Right.
and the way that you become regarded as an expert is through consistently putting out that good information and becoming people's go-to resource.
Hmm.
And like I've over the last maybe 1 to 2 years, like I've had a lot of like people who I used to be friends with and sort of lost touch with, or just acquaintances, reach out to me for help with their training programs, and it's like it's really cool. It's like wow, this is working. Like I wasn't purposely trying to like get this message to this group of people who I am connected with but haven't spoken to. Yet they're interested in fitness, and they've been seeing my posts for a while. And when they realize that they want help, I'm the person who comes to mind, which is
Hmm.
awesome, right? Like that's how you want to be. And the only way you get to be that way, well, two ways. One, by putting out really good information, and then two, by being a sleazy marketer.
Right.
And I would rather like keep my integrity and just put out really good information to a smaller group of people than kind of like selling out and going that route. So
Right.
yeah, if I have 4,000 followers instead of 40,000 followers, so be it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think you meant to make the connotation this way, but for clarification's sake, as an entrepreneur and somebody who does try to do marketing, there is we often refer to, and I think Travis is familiar with this too. I'm going to assume there is the light side and the dark side of marketing, where like when you learn about marketing, you learn about the things that people care about, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when you're referring to sleazy marketers, you're talking about people who are using those, what we refer to as triggers or pain points that people have, and basically trick them into purchasing things they don't need and making empty promises basically to solve your problem versus the light side, which is like, hey, I can solve your problem, but maybe I'm not perfect at writing the copy that, makes you fearful and then tells you I can solve your problem. So there are two sides to that. Just like not all marketers are bad, not
Yeah, I
all
think
non-marketers are good, all that kind of thing.
right. I think it's it's a fine line that you walk where, yeah, I'm willing to use a more provocative title to a blog post to get somebody to the blog,
Right.
and then I'm going to give them great information. But I don't want to create this like damaging narrative to get people there.
Right.
And so, yeah, like the counter example is like you said, like uh, I'm the only person who knows the secret to X.
Right.
Everybody else is wrong. Now buy my $300 product where I help you like get you out of pain. Blah 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 blah. It's like
Right.
I can't get behind that.
Right. And often, and I'll admit, like when I was like 18, 19, I bought a bunch of just like bullshit, get rich quick kind of things before I eventually found my way into a more um, mature and positive entrepreneurial community. But like those things, they work because they prey on people's desperation to solve their problem or fill their hopes, dreams, and desires. And that's where the sleazy marketer thing comes in, where it's
Yeah.
like sales and marketing by itself is neither good nor bad.
No.
It's just
The,
like how it's wielded.
right. If you think of it from the standpoint of like I'm qualified to help people, and
Right.
I have this service, whether it's an ebook or whether it's my personal train, like online or in-person personal training that like people would benefit from. Like I'm going to help people get stronger, more confident, better know their way around the gym, help them with their sports performance. If only they can have the opportunity to work with me. Now, then from that standpoint, like I would be doing people a disservice by not letting people know about this, right?
Right.
So but it's how you go about it, and it's a fine line between getting the word out without like preying on people's fears or like calling everybody else an idiot, that sort of thing.
Right. Right. Well, I think it's a case of like where what's the saying? One rotten apple spoils the bunch. Where it's like somebody does something sleazy or underhanded, and then that gives the rest of anybody trying to sell something like a bad name. Like I had this connotation too.
Yeah.
Like when I went to work at New Balance, so I helped fit shoes for runners and people with medical conditions for several years. And when I arrived, I was like, I don't want to be like a sleazy car salesman. I don't want to do that. And I never took that approach, even though the owners at the time, they were kind of in between the sleazy car salesman and where I am now, where it's like provide value first. They
Mm-hmm.
were somewhere in the middle. And just the way they presented it still didn't convince me that your whole goal is to solve a customer's problem. Um, so it's like I think when people get that bad experience wherever it is, then it's like defenses are up no matter who you are now because I don't want to get, tricked again.
Right.
So, um, Travis, before we run out of time, I have two questions with you.
Mm-hmm.
One of them I ask everybody at the end of the episode this year, but first I have to ask you what happened to the beard.
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that. So first I'll tell the story of the beard. It's not really a good story. It's that January of 2019, um, maybe like 3 weeks in, I realized that I hadn't shaved,
Mm,
and I had like a little bit of a beard, and I was like, huh, I wonder like how long I can go with this. Like, kind of enjoying the way this is looking. Let me see this through. So fast forward 8 months to August of 2019, I had a beard down to here, and that like so all the pictures of me, everything like beard, hair out, just nuts, mountain man. Um, and I liked it, but I don't know if you've ever had a beard. It's like,
I have patchy spots. I'm incapable.
yeah. And I appreciated my ability to grow this full beard, but it was difficult to maintain, just because you have to trim, which is, it's a little bit less work than shaving every day. But there's more upkeep to it than I think maybe people realize. and like food would get stuck as I was trying to eat. So, and then the real nail in the coffin was that the girlfriend despised it, and she for months was like begging me to get rid of it. And so finally, one night, so this is a funny story. This part of the story is funny. One night, I snuck out of the house to my friend's house who cuts my hair. This was at like, I don't know, 11 p.m. I come back, fully shaved head and face, and I go to get into bed. And my girlfriend, who doesn't usually wake up when I get into bed, she like kind of stirs and thinks that it's an intruder, because I don't have the beard anymore. And
Right.
when she went to bed 2 hours ago, I had it.
Right.
So she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, just go back to sleep. I wanted to surprise her because I thought it
Yeah.
was nice. You know, she'd been wanting me to get rid of the beard and whatever. And so she reaches over for me and feels to make sure that I don't have a leg. And that's how she knows that I'm not an intruder. Anyway, it didn't work quite as planned. And I sometimes miss the beard. I thought it looked good, but I probably will never grow it that long again. But it was good I'm glad I did it once. So that's the long story of the beard. And it's funny because if you like a lot of my social media, I think I probably still have it. I didn't really, I don't know. I don't take pictures and post that often. So like if I had come on today with a long beard, you probably wouldn't have been surprised.
Right.
But I have no beard. So
I don't think I was surprised either way, but there's usually a story when when it's gone from big beard to no beard. So
it's weird because I don't really, because I like, okay, so I had a beard for 8 months out of 30 years of life. I don't really think of myself as somebody with a beard, yet I had a beard. So if you met me between January and August of 2019, you would think I'm somebody who has a beard.
right.
And now,
Right.
but that's not how I identify. So it was kind of like this, like weird, like just dynamic because I don't know, not that having a beard has like a really serious connotation one way or another, but it's something about a person. Like people who have beards tend to have beards and people who don't tend not to. And I don't know. So, I've had interviews for job positions for after I finished school, and I guess like going to an interview with a big beard, it just speaks one thing about a person versus showing up clean shaved. Of course, I have these like goofy hipster glasses, so, but I don't know. The goofy hipster glasses are definitely my personality. The beard, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a difference. I know I used to have long hair in high school, like down shoulder length.
Yep.
And I know for a fact I did not get a job at Best Buy because I had the hair. And the reason I know that is because a friend worked at Best Buy and basically had heard from one of the hiring manager was like doesn't have the look to work here. Even though probably a work ethic, I'm a hard worker, but they weren't interested in even giving me an interview because I had long hair.
Yeah, I struggle with that, and I understand. I understand the rationale for selecting people who have a certain look to work, but it's like if you're gonna do a great job, it shouldn't really matter how you look, but it does. And
Right.
so, as a prospective employee somewhere, do I kind of fight for my right to look the way I want to look, or do I, because that's who I am, or for at least for the job interview, do I show up clean cut, well dressed?
Right.
And then once they get to know me, then probably switch to the funky glasses.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough.
All right. Well, so now I have to ask you my final question. And this is something I'm interested from everybody because everybody has a different perspective. So I'm asking everybody this year, what do you think the purpose of sport is?
Wow. I think that it's to test your limits, especially for me. That's really what it was about. It was like seeing what my breaking point was, right? Or
Hmm.
just trying to get so close to that, or even expanding that over time. Um, and I remember looking around at some of my high school teammates who weren't working as hard as me, and I was a little bit snooty about it, probably, because I was just giving it my all. And I would look over and see people like getting out and taking a water break or stretching or whatever, not because they needed to really per se, just because they were lazy or whatever. And I was like, why is that person afraid of hard work? And
Hmm.
that's not really fair of me, in hindsight, to think of it that way. Um, and not everybody took it as seriously as I took it. But for me, it was about testing myself and seeing what my limits were. And now, when I look back on that, I can think like anything that I'm to go through now, like probably isn't going to be as demanding as what I put my body through then. And so I can kind of use that, just to remember, like, I'm resilient, because I proved to myself over and over again that, something that was really hard I could get through. And so personally, that's what sport means to me, and I think probably other people can relate to that too, I would think.
It's a good answer. Like I said, everybody's different, so I loved hearing, how everybody takes it and approaches it. Because like even with running, say everybody that runs, like what we get from running is different. And so I kind of have a history I majored in psychology in college, one of my majors. And so I just have an interest in kind of the human mind, the human spirit, and
Sure.
how people behave, why they behave. So that's why I love that question, especially from people like you that have worked so hard for so long for certain goals.
And, like, I say that that would be like all of that would apply to the competitive thing that I did towards swimming.
Right.
Now, if you ask me that, my answer would be different. Like, yeah, I do some hand cycling, I do some recreational swimming, I do some rock climbing. The rock climbing I'm starting to get a little competitive with, but it's mostly just for fun.
Hmm.
I'm not like, I don't necessarily aspire to like the elite to be elite at that.
Hmm.
Um, Although I'm maybe tinkering with the thought of that. But anyway, like, now I exercise because I enjoy it and because it is a good outlet for me health wise, and my schoolwork benefits by being physically active, and it helps me think more clearly. I also want to be an example for my personal training clients. So all of those things, I guess it's sort of the difference between sport and recreational exercise.
Hmm. Hmm. Travis, if people want to see what you're doing, follow you, see those infographics, especially, where can they find you?
I'm on mostly Instagram these days, and my handle is fitness_pollinator. And then I'm on Facebook. I believe the public figure account is Travis Pollen Fitness Pollinator. And then my website is fitnesspollinator.com. So
If
any of
if
those
you're on
places.
YouTube and not on iTunes, then you will have the benefit of having all of those things on the screen.
Oh yeah,
Sometimes I get them in the description, but it's always nice when you're
yeah.
looking at the video and then you can see it.
Yeah, if anybody Googles my name, I think all of those places should pop
Yeah,
up.
you come up pretty
I
quick.
I spend a lot of time on all of those platforms, and I'm always happy to interact and answer any questions that I'm able to answer, or hopefully not pretend to answer too many questions I don't know the answer to. You get that sometimes, right? Like, I'm a rehabilitation sciences major, so people assume that I know a lot about exercise physiology, maybe, and I know next to nothing about exercise physiology. So
Right.
I'm quick to defer those sorts of questions.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds good, Travis. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I
Thank
hope you
you, Jesse.
have a good rest of the day.
You too.